Hi, I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Welcome to another series of Education One. We have a special guest. This man is world-renowned. He's a professor. He actually teaches something that most people really need, but guess what? He thinks out of the box. His name is David Martin, and actually he's a retired professor. He lives within the West Hartford area, and he's well-renowned traveler. Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Samuel. Nice to be here.
Tell the audience a little something about who's David Martin and your business and what you do.
I'm a retired professor from Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. That's the University for the Deaf.
Okay.
And I've been involved in training people in the thinking skills area for about 30 years, teachers and parents.
What you do, is it something that is unique or something that is actually a day-to-day thing?
It's unique in that there are very few programs that deal with the idea that intelligence can be improved. The idea of behind the program is that it would be used with teachers or parents or both several times a week, and I'm ready to demonstrate some of that for you if you'd like.
Okay. Before we go on and you go through your demonstration, I know this has been around for a while, what you guys been doing. Tell the audience exactly the different places you've been in the world, because I'm fascinated. When I hear what you spoke to me earlier about the places you've been, just elaborate some of the places that you've been.
Surely. Well, the program was developed originally by an Israeli psychologist back in the 1950s. But up till today, it's being used in approximately 70 different countries in 18 different languages, including the United States. And it has been in places such as Italy, South Africa, England, France, Germany, South America.
And you have actually a small little, actually a pilot, or not a pilot, but actually a working program within the Connecticut area.
Yes, we do some training in various parts of the United States, including in Connecticut.
Okay.
And we're one of approximately a dozen training centers in the world. Okay. There's 3 of them in the United States, and we're one of those, and we do training of teachers and parents around the country.
Okay, let's see what you have. Let's just show the audience.
Sure. Well, as I said, the program is based on the idea that intelligence can be improved. And a lot of people don't believe that, but we've got evidence that shows that people can learn to be smarter. I may never be as smart as you are in a particular skill, but I can be better than I am today if I do the right things with the right materials and with the person who's been trained. And so when we talk about thinking skills, we're talking about things like being able to find a pattern, being able to compare or categorize or analyze or use logic to give reasons for something. And it's easy to imagine how those are very important, not only in schoolwork, but also in life, in the workplace for older learners, as well as in social life and family life. And so what I thought I would do is just show you just a sampling of some of the activities.
Okay.
Before I do that, I think it's helpful to know that there are 3 steps in the teaching process that's used in the program. And the first one is working with a task that is actually from the program. It's largely paper and pencil, but other things too. The second is standing back from that and thinking about our thinking. And you might say, well, why is that important? And the answer is that it's fine to be able to solve a problem or find a task that you can fix, but until you're able to think about your thinking, then you're always dependent on somebody else. And we want children and other learners to be independent, so when they hit a problem, they'll say, oh, I could do it that way or this way. And the third step in any kind of episode for teaching thinking is applying that skill to something, whether it's schoolwork or family life or work life.
Right.
So I'll give some examples of that.
Okay.
I brought with me a sample of one of the pages from the part of the program that's intended for ages 9 up through adult. There is
Okay.
another version for younger children, but this is on the skill of finding patterns. I'll just hold this up here, and perhaps we can zoom in on it a little bit. You'll see that it's a series of dots that one has to find connections for. In this case, finding squares and triangles.
Right.
And it starts out easy at first, and then it becomes harder. And that's, of course, the idea of holding the pattern in your mind and then finding it, even though it may turn around,
Right.
it's still there. So that's one particular example of a series of activities on that.
Okay.
And so once you solve that, then the answer is, well, how did you get that answer, which is thinking about thinking. What was your plan? What was your strategy? Did I look for the square first, or why? So there's all kinds of techniques that are involved in that.
So this is something that when the mind looks at an object,
Yes,
something like physics,
yes.
what do they look at first? What do they zoom on first? Are you looking the way we're teaching you, or are you looking something backwards or whatever? So you actually, this is like pinpointing the problem.
Yes, it's pinpointing the problem in terms of deciding what the problem is,
Right.
and then developing a plan for how to solve it.
Right.
And so maybe I'll take an example of where this could be applied. We all know that children do reading of stories in schoolwork. Well, what's the connection between finding a pattern and reading a story? Well, when you read a story, you look for the pattern of events or the pattern of the behavior of the characters. We also use pattern finding when we study history. History is not just a bunch of events, but it follows patterns. So that's an example of one task, thinking about thinking, and then how it could be applied. I have another one here
Go ahead.
that I'll show you.
I'm fascinated, so we will take a look.
Well, one of the other big skills is being able to compare. And you might say, well, where is it important to compare? So I'll come back to that.
Okay.
But this is the first page of a series of activities all about comparison. And the task here is to look at the pairs of pictures and find what's the same and what's different. So let's take the second row,
Okay.
which is two sort of circles.
Okay.
Now, what you might say is common there, or the same, is that there are apples, but it would be even better to say they're round white apples.
Right.
But the differences are very interesting. This looks like first grade material, and it's not. Some people will say, well, left is big, right is small. Other people say left is near, and right is far. So who's right? We've got near and far and big and small.
Right.
And the story there is, if you can defend your answer logically, then I, as the teacher, have to accept that. But having reasons behind what you say. And so comparing is the subject of all of these activities. Now, thinking about thinking, well, I recall a student that I had who came up with a wonderful statement. He said, well, when I compare in my mind, I have the two things, I make a list of what's true about each one, and then in my mind I cross off the things that are different, and what I'm left with is how they're the same. That's what we call thinking about thinking, because he has a mental picture of what it means to be a comparer.
Right.
And of course, to make a connection to some application, what we call a bridge, where do we use comparison? Well, we compare different kinds of problem solving in mathematics.
Right.
We certainly compare different figures in history, and we look for similarities and differences. We compare the Republicans and the Democrats. Where are they the same? Where are they different, and why? So there's no shortage of places to.
And it's something I have to cut in for a second, is that in the world of MC Square or Education One, this is something that we're trying to actually teach kids,
yes,
the adults, of when they look at a Common Core a program or the module that they build, it's more than actually just trying to teach the kid what's X minus Y.
exactly.
Because the thing about it is, algebra is not as hard as people think it is, but in back of their mind, they have a phobia.
Right.
And this is what critical thinking is trying to break down, the phobia. Everything is really fun, but once you go in, you don't have the basic actually building blocks.
Right.
To get from the first grade to the 8th grade, it becomes something out of sight, out of mind to the child. So now we have a thing that before they drop out of school, let's try to catch you before you drop out, truancy, jail, and all that. To try to say, you know something? Geez, 5 years ago, if the teacher did it this way for me, I would have learned.
Exactly. You said it very well, and the reason I know you're right on target is that you referred to the Common Core,
Right.
which is, of course, the new set of curriculum standards of the country.
Right.
It's very important for us to understand that underneath that Common Core
Right.
are things like this, skills like comparing, categorizing, organizing, and so on. And if we can teach those at an early age, or even at a later age when it's not too late, then that brings everything in the way of subject matter into line. And of course, it helps them later on the job too. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, well, maybe I've got time to show you one other.
You got time. We have time.
Here's an example from the younger version of the program, which is for ages 3 to 8.
Okay.
Now, this is, of course, pictorial,
All right.
because these children largely are probably not reading yet.
Okay.
So the task here on this is to look at the situation, decide what's the comparison between them, and what's wrong here, and how could we fix it. And so if you can see this, you can see that there's a small donkey smiling, pulling a very heavy load uphill. And there's a large donkey pulling a very small load, struggling and pulling downhill. So, of course, the first thing is to say, well, let's compare them. Large, small, heavy, light, and so on, uphill, downhill. But then something doesn't make sense here. And so what the children have to do is to see that this does not make sense in terms of what we know. And the big question is, how could we fix the picture? What would you change to make it make sense?
That's part of physics.
That's right, exactly. Very good point.
That's it. That's
right.
I looked at it. I said, I have to come up with Newton's law.
Absolutely, it's gravity all over.
Exactly. Or Galileo.
Yes, indeed. Right. So anyway, that's just a sampling of one of the activities from one of the programs. There's actually in the older program for ages 9 and up, there
Right.
is a total of 14 groups of activities, each of which is about 20 in length, so it's about a 3-year program.
Okay.
And the younger version of the program, age 3 to 8, has 11 different collections of activities, can be spread easily over a 2-year time period.
I need to ask you a question before we move on. Let's take an average minority child,
Okay,
black or Latino, doesn't matter.
yeah,
That is between the 8th and 9th grade.
okay,
We're talking reality right now. Basically, the problems we have in Hartford is the child's pretty much 2 or 3 years behind,
yes,
but they're pushed along.
yes,
Okay, now we have something in the 40s of actually dropout and truancy.
Yes.
Still to this day.
Yes.
Stop me if I'm wrong
no,
here.
you're
now.
right. Mhm.
So now, how can we catch a child, a minority child right now,
Yes,
to say, before he drops out, and not so much we push him along, do we stop him right there in the 8th grade before we go in the 9th grade, or do we work with them to an after-school program to try to bring them up to speed?
I would say the second option is the best, but I'd like to change that by modifying it a little bit. It's first of all, the big idea here is it's never too late.
Okay.
And a lot of people in the world, unfortunately, don't believe that. They're
Okay.
willing to write kids off,
Okay.
and that's criminal, in my opinion.
Okay.
So what I favor in the kind of children you're talking about, who have, in the example of 8th and 9th grade area, is a two-pronged approach. One is prepare their teachers to use this kind of method and give them the materials for that as part of integrating during the regular school week.
Okay.
And then secondly, some after-school tutorial work can bring them up to speed as well.
Okay.
But
And
it's
that depends what it is.
Yes, of course.
Right.
But it's a whole set of critical thinking skills in a program like this, and so it could be parceled out and spread throughout a school or a school program.
Okay.
Yeah. And while I'm mentioning that, I'll mention also that we've had very good luck in training parents who are interested in working with their children as well,
Right.
particularly children who have some serious challenges.
Right.
That's a powerful combination, teacher and parent.
Right.
together.
Right. It's just, it is.
Yeah.
That means, but the thing about it is these parents, not teachers, but parents, are they actually screened, or do you actually say, okay, we have these 15 kids already, we went through the application process, whatever, and we're gonna bring the parents in and says, you know something, your child is here, you definitely gotta do it also.
Right. Well, what we do normally is we'll go into a school and provide an informational workshop for teachers and the principal and say, this is what it means to incorporate thinking skills. And if you'd like to get on board and
Right.
have the training and implement the materials, then here's how we'll set it up. And we'll also invite the parents to come on a voluntary basis so that they can at least reinforce
Right.
what's happening in school. And in one of the cities where I did the training, we had something like about 60% of the parents
Showing up.
volunteered.
Volunteers.
But whereas 100% of the teachers, of course.
Right, exactly.
Now, that's different from a group of parents that I just worked with in California, who are all parents of children with Down syndrome.
Okay.
And they want to work with their child very directly
One-on-one.
for one-on-one for 2 years before they're ready for school with the critical thinking skills.
All right, now, we work with the disability. What about the kids that are actually just slow?
Okay. This is a kind of a program that's actually good for everyone and in different ways. Even the so-called gifted children
Okay.
need this in the way of having a
Or
plan.
the AP kids?
That's right, the AP kids.
Right.
Sometimes AP kids have some problems because everything comes easy, and then when they hit something challenging, they say,
Right.
oh, it's not important.
Right, they fluster.
That's right.
Okay.
And so they need it in a different way than a child who is perhaps behind.
I keep going back to actually the struggling kids, because basically, if we can figure out a formula
Yes.
to break down and call it the achievement gap or
Yes.
digital divide, they keep changing the name.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter what the name is.
Right.
It's basically kids that are failing.
Right.
And I like to see the number come down so dramatic, because the thing about it is, it's mostly minority kids.
Yes.
And to me, it's embarrassing to me, because I'm a minority. But I was fortunate of have people in my corner like yourself.
Yes.
But I wasn't growing up I grew up part of my life in Connecticut, but I was really born in New York.
Uh-huh.
So I had a mixture of different looks, of different nationalities.
Yes.
And it's a good thing. It's a good thing that I grew up with the Italians and the Jews and the Dominicans, and it's a good thing. But some of the kids today do not have that exposure.
Right.
And the way life is today is shrinking.
Yes.
So when you look at somebody like a David Martin, and he's sort of a laid-back person, you have to be sort of a laid-back person to talk to kids that are actually in a box.
That's right.
If not, you will never get to them. You never capture their attention.
Right.
And today, where kids are, it's like me. I would have to be saying, okay, I have to talk to Dr. Martin. My class is at 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. I have to pass the test. Boom, 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 boom. I learned something from but today, kids would say, you know something, I don't have to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop out.
Well, there's two things behind all that, and one I mentioned before about you have to have the belief, which is based on scientific research,
Right.
that intelligence can be improved, rather than just saying, well, that's the way the child is now, and it's too bad. But secondly, either parents or teachers or both have to make a commitment to say, we not only believe that, but we want to do something about it, and we're going to revise the curriculum to attack it that way. And if they have that commitment, and it's been true in many of the schools just that had success, then you get results. Not overnight.
Right.
And this is a program that does not promise a quick fix, because when we're talking about thinking skills, that takes time.
Right.
You know,
It's basically, it's the background of it, thinking about this right now is how actually you live.
yes.
It's the area, it's the mindset, it's the parents' mindset. It's a lot of moving parts socially.
Yes.
So if you're not a rigid, but you're not in a structured system,
Yes.
it becomes very difficult to see what Dr. Martin's talking about, or whatever the person actually came up with this ideology to say, this is how, like, when you watch a movie, or like MacGyver, or you watch Burn Notice, he talks through the program,
Yes.
and he's telling you how to think,
Yes,
how to
indeed.
get out of a situation. Now, the show is exciting, but he's thinking and he's telling you what to do, and he's telling you maybe you may not be able to get out of it. So, I'm looking at programs, and I sit down and I says, Burn Notice, or 0 Hour and stuff like that. It makes you think.
Yes, it does. You know, that's a great example that you've given about the person thinking out loud.
Right.
And that's one of the strategies we
Right.
use in the program,
Right.
because you have to talk to yourself
So-
and think it through, because the process is the most
And
important.
they say, well, who are you talking to? I'm talking to myself.
That's right.
That's the old saying.
And that's perfectly okay. It's normal.
You got anything else, Dr. Martin?
Well, I did want to just share with you the results that have been found over the years in the program, and I mentioned that there's been a lot of research studies done in different places, and the results of the program for the older children, age 9 and up, show a really important improvement in language, and reading, and in mathematics, but also in the way they approach problems, slowing down, making a plan, and so
Right.
on. There are some other effects on that, including reasoning. With the younger program for ages 3 to 8, we've found some changes in thinking habits, being able to look at the whole picture, taking in all the information, and again, making a plan, and being able to think about some of their thought processes, even at a pretty young age, which is pretty surprising. We can provide the summaries of research studies for anybody who would like it. At the end of the program, I'll give you a website that people can go to and get that data.
Right. At the end of the program, we'll let you go through the whole thing, who you are, where you are,
Sure.
contact information,
That's
all
right.
that stuff, and
Sure.
because it's needed.
Sure, sure.
Let me say something in part, because we have about 5 minutes left.
Yes.
What I do, I'm not a professional in this, but you could sit down and sometimes you can read people,
Yes.
and that's part of what you do.
Yes, it is.
Because when you go into a situation, you can say this guy's honest or he's not honest. You can read people quick. Some people don't have that ability.
Right.
But in the school system, they do not teach this at all.
No, that's true.
This is something that I think if they did teach what you're saying, the funding, the political aspects, and everything else would go wayside. Why would you build a Common Core program and spend millions of dollars and not have something like this actually built in
Yes.
and have kids fail, knowing that they're going to fail?
Right. Well, I think the problem boils down to one thing, and even though the Common Core is relatively new, it comes out of the same approach, and that is that a lot of curriculum is based on either memorizing or getting a hold of particular bodies of knowledge and facts, and not going beneath that to the cognitive processes or the thinking skills that are really behind it, because that's what's going to last. So that long after I've forgotten the formula for how to find the area of a circle,
Right.
do I at least know the process
Of
that
getting
I
it.
can go at getting it in the first place? And so that's where I say that the Common Core is great in terms of an agreed upon curriculum, but we have to go underneath that and incorporate thinking skills together with the Common Core subject matter.
I look at so much time and energy from so many different administrations, but they don't understand. You have to understand where a person is coming from financially, socially, and everything else. And when I did worked a number of years up in Barber Street, Pastor Lanier told me, she said, Brother Sam, you can teach them what 2 + 2 is. You have no idea what they're going through.
Right, exactly.
And that's the key to the whole thing.
That's
and
right.
I've been talking about this for years. So they're pumping money into food and all this, but that's just a quick fix. It doesn't really sustain the 15 or 20 or 30 kids in your classroom, and you have X number of kids. So they says, hey, we got to do 200 or 300 kids. Somebody out of 200 kids, how many kids fail?
That's right. Well, I would like very much to have the opportunity to talk with the school board and school officials about this. We have done some of that in the past. But just to summarize and back up what you're saying, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Confucius, the old Chinese philosopher.
Okay, go ahead.
And we think he said this. He said, "Give me a fish and I'll eat tomorrow, but teach me how to fish and I will eat for a lifetime." And to me, that summarizes the whole thing. Yeah, I can give you a fish, I can give you knowledge, and you'll be able to function tomorrow or pass the test. But if I teach you how to fish and the process, then ultimately you're not going to need me anymore, because you'll be able to create your own knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, before we conclude, let the viewers know who you are, what you are, where you are, where's your headquarters, your phone number, email, the whole enchilada.
Very good. Well, I don't know if that's going to be visible from the screen, but I did bring a summary of that if you'd like. I put my email address on here, but let me just summarize that. As I mentioned, I work with one of several training centers for the program called Instrumental Enrichment. And the website that I want to mention that anyone can go to and
You can look right in the camera.
Sure, is www.ictaweb.org. I'll repeat that, www.ictaweb.org. And that's the website of the training center, whose director is Irving Shine. It's physically headquartered in West Hartford, but that's pretty much of a coincidence, because we do work all over the country. And I'm doing currently work in South Africa as well. So the other thing I'll mention is that we would welcome the opportunity to provide free workshops for information for anyone who wants to find out more or investigate this from a school or a parent point of view. My email address is davidmartindr, like doctor, at AOL.com. davidmartindr at AOL.com. So I'd be very happy to get inquiries and any requests for information from anyone who would like.
This is something that we're actually almost out of time, but this is one of my best shows, because the thing about it is, I always talked about critical thinking.
Yes.
My company, MC Square, is named after Einstein. He wasn't a great mathematician in the beginning, but you see where God took him.
Yes.
And I built it around the 28 known galaxies. But thinking is one of the things that people should do constantly. He always said, the body sleeps, but the mind never sleeps.
Absolutely right.
And I always tell people that, they take it as a joke, but the thing about it is you can see things quickly. You can read things quickly, and I'm going to have you back.
Thank you.
Back. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, there's another series, another adventure, another great person that came on Education One. As we say every Tuesday, if it's Tuesday, it's Education One. We see you on the internet. Thanks a lot. You have a nice day now. Bye-bye.